In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the properties of addition to add fractions. But before we get into that, I need to explain a couple of vocabulary words so this might make sense to you. We'll start with the commutative property. This is a rule that allows you to move things around in an addition problem, and that will not change the answer. Here's an example right here. 3 plus 5. If I decided to switch them around into 5 plus 3, they would still equal 8. That wouldn't change my answer at all. Let me show you in a much bigger picture. If I were to do 3 plus 5, or switch them around as 5 plus 3, they would still both equal 8. This will also work if you have something like 3 digits, 3 add-ins. For example, 1 plus 2 plus 3. If I use the commutative property, I can move them around however I want. For example, I can do 3 plus 1 plus 2, or 2 plus 3 plus 1. It doesn't matter because they will all give me the same answer. That's why this is a property. It means it's a rule. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 2 equals 6. And then that is also going to equal 6. That's the commutative property. Now, the associative property is a rule that says I can group things with parentheses to make addition easier. So, for example, I have an example here, but let me make it bigger. I'm gonna zoom in here. So, I started out with 1 plus 2 plus 3 in my example before, right? With the associative property, I can group things together to make it easier to add. So I can do 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, and then bring this plus 3 down. And now it equals 6. Or I can leave it as 1 plus 2 plus 3, but instead group 2 plus 3 and add this first. 2 plus 3 equals 5, and then bring my 1 down and add it, and it still equals 6. So why do we need to know these properties? It makes it easier to add, especially with fractions. Let me give you an example of one. Let's start with 3 separate add-ins that are mixed numbers. So I have 1 and 1/3 plus 2 plus 3 and 2 over 3. And according to this equation, it has parentheses right here. Holy moly, that looks difficult, but it's really not. So let's go over the steps on how to use these properties to help us add with ease. Number 1, look for fractions that add up to 1. What I'm talking about is looking at the mixed numbers, look for fractions that add up to 1. There's only 2 fractions here, and it's 1/3 and 2 over 3. I know that 1/3 plus 2 over 3 will equal 3 over 3. That's why step 1 makes things a little bit easier to look at. It's getting us ready to add fractions that are already going to equal 1. So which property should I use in order to do that? The best thing to do is to use the commutative property right now. If you remember, the commutative property says that you can move things around and everything will be fine. So I'm going to use the commutative property, and I'm going to use my pink pen because I highlighted this in pink or purple, however it looks to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these 2 around. So 3 and 2 over 3 is going to go to the middle, you could say, and then I'm going to switch 2 on this side. I haven't really done any computation, no addition, no subtraction. All I did was move it, okay? And the 1 and 1/3 is going to stay the same. All right, so now that I've used the commutative property, I got the fractions a little bit closer to each other, which was my goal. That's step number 1, and I just did step number 2. Step number 3 is use the associative property. Remember, it's the one about grouping things together so that I can add in a much easier way. So I'm going to do that in blue so that you can see what's going to happen. I'm going to write 1 and 1/3 in blue plus 3 and 2 over 3 in blue with parentheses because I'm using the associative property to group them together. So that means that the 2, all I did was leave it on the other side. So if you notice, the 2 started here, then it made its way to the end of this group, but then I took it out of the group, and that's okay. You can do that. Last but not least, we find the sum. Now here's the cool part about this. We can do the whole numbers first, 1 plus 3, that equals 4. And then our fractions, 1/3 plus 2/3 equals 3 over 3, or you could even write 1. I'm going to do both at the same time. I'm going to write a big fat 1, okay? So there's a big fat 1. 3 over 3. It's still 1, but it's also a fraction. Plus my 2. I'm just going to bring it down. Here's the awesome part. Now you could even use the associative property again if you want to. You can pick to group 4 plus 1, or you can pick to group 1 plus 2. I'm going to just do a simple 4 plus 1. That's 5. Plus 2 equals 7 wholes. So we started with mixed numbers and whole numbers, but my final answer is 7.